In 794 CE, when Emperor Kanmu established Heian-kyo, he wasn't just founding a capital, he was orchestrating humanity's most sophisticated dialogue with nature. The morning mist clung to the ancient cedars of Mount Hiei as Buddhist monks descended into what would become Kyoto. But these weren't ordinary settlers. They carried with them a millennium of accumulated wisdom about reading nature's signals, understanding her rhythms, and living within her laws rather than against them. The site selection for Heian-kyo revealed knowledge that modern urban planners are only beginning to rediscover. The ancient Japanese understood feng shui's Japanese cousin, Kaso, with scientific precision that wouldn't be matched in the West for another 1,000 years. They knew that the Kamo and Katsuragawa rivers didn't just provide water. Their confluence created microclimates that could predict weather patterns months in advance. Master carpenter Shigemasa walked through the forest with eyes that saw what others missed. Each tree told a story. The slight lean of a cypress indicated prevailing wind patterns. The moss distribution on cedar bark revealed humidity cycles crucial for construction timing. The spacing between ancient pines showed soil composition and earthquake frequency, knowledge that would determine whether buildings stood for decades or centuries. This wasn't superstition. It was empirical science disguised as spiritual practice. The Shinto concept of kami, spirits dwelling in natural objects, was actually a sophisticated system for cataloging environmental data. Every sacred grove, every marked stone, every shrine location represented a data point in a vast ecological database maintained across generations. The Satoyama system emerged from this understanding. These managed forest ecosystems surrounding villages weren't just sustainable, they were regenerative. Farmers knew exactly when to harvest bamboo for maximum strength, which phases of the moon produced the best timber, and how to read forest sounds to predict everything from rainfall to animal migration patterns. When the court nobles of Heian-kyo wrote poetry about cherry blossoms, they weren't being merely aesthetic, they were documenting phenological data, the timing of natural events that served as biological calendars more accurate than any human timekeeping device. A poem noting early sakura blooms was actually recording climate data that informed agricultural decisions for the entire region. The knowledge went deeper than observation. Ancient Japanese understood that humans weren't separate from natural systems. They were participants in them. The concept of harmony, wasn't philosophical idealism, but ecological realism. Disrupting natural balance had immediate, measurable consequences that affected everything from crop yields to human health. But perhaps most remarkably, they understood that nature itself was intelligent. The forest communicated through what they called kodama, forest echoes that carried information about weather changes, animal movements, and seasonal shifts. Modern science has validated this intuition. Forests do communicate through underground networks of fungal threads and chemical signals, creating what researchers now call the wood wide web. And what ancient Japan knew was that survival depended not on conquering nature, but on becoming fluent in her language. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment below with your thoughts on this ancient wisdom. What aspects of traditional Japanese environmental knowledge intrigue you most? Deep in the mountains of ancient Yamashiro province, a singular figure moved through morning shadows, a woman whose knowledge would challenge everything the modern world believes about healing. Lady Yoshiko wasn't born to nobility, but by 834 CE, her reputation had reached the imperial court. She possessed something more valuable than gold or political influence, the ability to read the forest like a vast pharmacy where every plant, mushroom and mineral held specific healing properties understood through centuries of careful observation. This knowledge system, called Yakuso, represented humanity's first systematic approach to pharmacology. While European medicine still relied on bloodletting and prayer, Japanese healers had developed a sophisticated understanding of bioactive compounds, drug interactions, and personalized treatment based on individual constitution and environmental factors. The morning ritual began before dawn. Lady Yoshiko would examine the dew patterns on leaves, not for mystical reasons, but because dew formation indicated optimal harvesting conditions for different medicinal compounds. Sancho peppercorns, collected at specific humidity levels, contained higher concentrations of hydroxy-alpha-sanjoule, the compound that provided their medicinal numbing properties. Her knowledge extended far beyond simple herbalism. She understood what modern science calls chronopharmacology, how the timing of medicine administration affected its potency. Kudzu root, harvested during the new moon, contained different alkaloid concentrations than that collected during the full moon. This timing wasn't superstition. It reflected the plant's natural circadian rhythms and their impact on active compound synthesis. The Japanese system recognized what Western medicine has only recently acknowledged, that effective healing requires understanding the patient's entire environment, not just isolated symptoms. The concept of mibyo, treating illness before it manifests, led to diagnostic techniques that identified imbalances in the body's relationship with seasonal changes, dietary patterns, and emotional states. Traditional practitioners developed the Gogyo theory, which corresponded different organs to natural elements and seasonal cycles. A patient showing symptoms during autumn would be treated differently than one with identical symptoms appearing in spring, because the underlying energetic imbalances were fundamentally different. Modern chronobiology has validated this approach. Human physiology does indeed fluctuate dramatically with seasonal and circadian cycles, but the most sophisticated aspect of ancient Japanese medicine was its recognition of the healing environment itself. Temples and healing centers were constructed using principles that maximized exposure to beneficial environmental factors. The famous temple complex at Mount Koya wasn't just spiritually significant. Its elevation, orientation, and surrounding forest composition created optimal conditions for respiratory healing, meditation practice, and recovery from various ailments. Lady Yoshiko's diagnostic methods included techniques that wouldn't be scientifically understood until the development of modern environmental medicine. She could detect heavy metal poisoning by observing changes in tongue coating and pulse quality. She identified nutritional deficiencies by examining fingernail patterns and skin texture. Most remarkably, she could predict seasonal illness outbreaks by monitoring specific plant behavior and animal migration patterns. The preparation methods were equally sophisticated. Different extraction techniques, water decoction, alcohol tincture, fermentation, and ash preparation were chosen based on the specific compounds needed and the patient's digestive capacity. The timing of preparation followed lunar and seasonal cycles that optimized active ingredient concentration and stability. This knowledge was maintained through an apprenticeship system that required decades of training. Students learned not just which plants to use, but how to read the subtle environmental signs that indicated optimal harvesting conditions, how to prepare medicines that remained stable without artificial preservatives, and how to adjust treatments based on individual constitution and environmental factors. The integration of healing with ecological knowledge meant that practitioners inherently understood sustainability. They knew exactly how much could be harvested from each location without damaging the plant community, how to encourage regeneration, and how to maintain the forest ecosystems that supported medicinal plant diversity. What ancient Japan understood was that true healing couldn't be separated from ecological health, that human wellness and environmental wellness were fundamentally interconnected. On a quiet morning in 869 CE, the earth began to speak, and only those who understood her language would survive what came next. The Great Jogan earthquake would be remembered as one of the most devastating natural disasters in Japanese history, but in the moments before it struck, the forest was already broadcasting warnings to those who knew how to listen. Birds fell silent in specific patterns. Underground water sources shifted their flow, Even the bamboo groves seemed to whisper secrets about the coming catastrophe. Master Takeda, a Jishin earthquake reader, had spent his lifetime learning to interpret these signals. His knowledge wasn't mystical intuition, but rather the culmination of generations of systematic observation, passed down through families who understood that survival in earthquake-prone Japan required becoming fluent in the Earth's subtle communications. The ancient Japanese had developed the world's most sophisticated early warning system for natural disasters, built not on instruments but on intimate knowledge of environmental behavior patterns. They understood that the Earth constantly communicated its intentions through changes in animal behavior, plant growth patterns, groundwater chemistry, and atmospheric conditions. Takeda's morning routine involved checking what he called Jizen-cho, precursor signs. The behavior of horses and cattle provided reliable indicators of seismic activity up to several days in advance. Dogs would become restless and refuse to enter certain buildings. Cats would avoid sleeping in their usual locations. But the most reliable indicators came from smaller creatures, snakes emerging from hibernation at unusual times, unusual patterns in insect behavior, and changes in the singing patterns of specific bird species. Underground water sources served as another crucial information network. Springs that ran clear for decades would suddenly become cloudy. Well water levels would fluctuate without explanation. The temperature of hot springs would shift by degrees that seemed insignificant but indicated massive geological processes occurring deep beneath the surface. The plant kingdom provided perhaps the most sophisticated warning system. Bamboo groves would rustle differently in the days before major seismic events, not because of wind changes, but because their root systems detected minute ground vibrations imperceptible to human senses. Certain flowering trees would bloom out of season, triggered by underground chemical changes that preceded geological activity. This knowledge extended beyond earthquake prediction to weather forecasting with accuracy that wouldn't be matched by modern meteorology for centuries. The Japanese understood that weather patterns were interconnected systems spanning vast geographical areas. A skilled weather reader could predict the intensity and timing of typhoons weeks in advance by observing cloud formations over distant mountains, changes in ocean current temperatures, and the migration patterns of specific bird species. The Kumoyomi, cloud readers, developed a classification system for cloud formations that correlated specific shapes and movements with precise weather outcomes. They understood that certain cloud formations indicated not just coming rain, but the specific intensity, duration, and geographical distribution of precipitation. This knowledge was crucial for agricultural timing, flood preparation, and navigation. Perhaps most remarkably, ancient Japanese observers understood the connection between solar activity and terrestrial weather patterns. They tracked what they called Taiyo no Koku, the sun's breath, by observing aurora activity, which they correctly identified as related to both solar behavior and subsequent weather changes. They noticed that unusual aurora displays often preceded significant changes in seasonal patterns, information that informed agricultural planning and disaster preparation. The integration of astronomical observation with terrestrial monitoring created a comprehensive system for understanding natural cycles. The ancient Japanese tracked not just lunar phases, but planetary positions, understanding that gravitational influences affected everything from tidal patterns to animal behavior to human physiology. This knowledge was preserved through a combination of oral tradition and written records maintained at temples and by government officials. The Nihon Ryoiki and other historical texts contain detailed accounts of natural phenomena that serve as both historical records and instruction manuals for future generations. The remarkable aspect of this system was its recognition that all natural phenomena were interconnected, An earthquake in one region would be preceded by changes in weather patterns, animal behavior, and plant growth hundreds of kilometers away. A volcanic eruption would trigger cascade effects visible in ocean currents, atmospheric conditions, and seasonal timing across vast areas. What ancient Japan understood was that the Earth itself was a living communication system, constantly broadcasting information about its internal processes to those who developed the sensitivity and knowledge to interpret its signals. Smash that subscribe button and ring the notification bell to never miss these incredible historical insights. What natural warning signs have you observed in your own environment? Share your experiences in the comments. In the fading light of 1185 CE, as the Kamakura period began, Japan possessed something the modern world has almost entirely forgotten: the ability to live as part of nature's rhythm rather than in opposition to it. The last master of Nijushi Seki, the 24 seasonal divisions, stood in his garden, watching the subtle signs that indicated the transition from Rishun to Usui. To untrained eyes, nothing had changed. To Master Hayashi, the entire world was shifting gears, and human life needed to shift with it. This wasn't poetic romanticism. It was survival science developed over millennia, recognizing that human health, productivity, and happiness depended on synchronizing with natural cycles that operated on multiple timescales simultaneously: daily, lunar, seasonal, and annual rhythms that affected everything from immune function to mental clarity to reproductive cycles. The Nijushi Seki system divided the year into 24 periods of approximately 15 days each, but each period was further subdivided into 3 ko, micro-seasons of about 5 days. This created 72 distinct seasonal moments, each with its own optimal activities, foods, medicines, and behavioral patterns. Modern chronobiology has validated this intuition. Human physiology does indeed operate on these precise, cyclical patterns. Master Hayashi's daily routine changed subtly but significantly with each seasonal transition. During Daikan, the coldest period, his morning exercises focused on generating internal heat and stimulating circulation. His diet emphasized warming foods like miso soup with root vegetables and fermented foods that supported immune function during the season of greatest vulnerability. His sleep patterns adjusted to maximize rest during the period when daylight was shortest and cellular repair processes were most active. But as the season transitioned to Rishun, the beginning of spring, everything shifted. Exercise routines emphasized gentle stretching and movement that supported the liver's detoxification processes. Diet transitioned to include more fresh sprouts and bitter greens that aided the body's natural cleansing cycles. Sleep patterns gradually adjusted to align with increasing daylight, supporting the gradual transition from winter's introspective energy to spring's outward expansion. The sophistication of this system extended far beyond individual health practices. Entire communities synchronized their activities with these natural rhythms. Construction projects were timed to take advantage of optimal weather conditions and material properties. Wood harvesting followed lunar cycles that affected moisture content and structural integrity. Agricultural activities were precisely choreographed to maximize both yield and soil health. The Japanese understanding of seasonal eating, shun, represented one of humanity's most sophisticated approaches to nutrition. They recognized that foods naturally available during each season provided exactly the nutrients needed to support optimal health during that period. Spring's bitter greens supported liver detoxification after winter's heavier foods. Summer's cooling fruits and vegetables helped regulate body temperature and provided hydration during hot weather. Autumn's nuts and heavier foods prepared the body for winter's increased energy demands. This knowledge extended to preparation and preservation methods that maximized nutritional value and created food security without artificial preservatives or refrigeration. The timing of fermentation processes followed seasonal temperature and humidity patterns that optimized beneficial bacterial activity. Drying and preservation techniques took advantage of specific weather conditions that prevented spoilage while concentrating flavors and nutrients. Master Hayashi's expertise included understanding how seasonal transitions affected human psychology and social dynamics. He recognized that certain times of year were optimal for beginning new projects, while others favored introspection and planning. Community festivals and ceremonies were timed to support collective psychological health during seasonal transitions that could trigger depression, anxiety, or social conflict. The architectural principles of traditional Japanese buildings reflected this deep understanding of seasonal variation. Homes were designed to be easily reconfigured for different seasons. Walls that could be removed to encourage air circulation in summer, spaces that could be closed and heated efficiently in winter. The positioning and design of windows, doors, and gardens maximized beneficial seasonal influences while minimizing harsh conditions. Perhaps most remarkably, the Japanese developed sophisticated techniques for predicting and preparing for seasonal variations. They maintained detailed records of weather patterns, plant behavior, and animal activity that allowed them to anticipate unusual seasonal variations years in advance. This knowledge supported community-wide preparation for difficult seasons and optimization of agricultural and construction activities. The decline of this knowledge began during the Meiji Restoration, as Japan rapidly westernized and adopted industrial schedules that ignored natural rhythms. The adoption of electric lighting, heating, and artificial food preservation methods gradually disconnected Japanese society from the seasonal awareness that had sustained their ancestors for centuries. What ancient Japan understood was that human beings were not separate from natural cycles, but were integral parts of them. Health, happiness, and prosperity came not from fighting against these rhythms, but from learning to dance with them, creating a way of life that was both sustainable and deeply satisfying because it aligned with the fundamental patterns that govern all life on Earth. Thank you for joining this incredible journey through ancient Japanese wisdom. If this series has opened your eyes to forgotten knowledge, please subscribe, like, and share with others who might appreciate these timeless insights. What seasonal practices from your own cultural heritage do you think deserve to be revived? Let us know in the comments below.